about the slap. I didn't mean to hurt you, just stress. I lashed out without thinking. Give me the fucking phone! I'm calling the chopper. I don't want to hear another word about it. He'll be there in 30 minutes, okay?
The film begins with a sweeping view of a vast desert. The silence is broken by the roar of a helicopter slicing through the sky, carrying Richard and his girlfriend Jennifer as they make their way to Richard's remote home, tucked away deep in the desert's unforgiving heart. Richard and Jennifer are eager to enjoy some intimate time together before his friends arrive for their annual hunting trip. As the helicopter prepares to depart, the pilot hands Richard a parting gift, a stash of peyote for him and his guests to indulge in later. Moments after, Richard steps inside to find Jennifer waiting, radiating a bold, irresistible allure that seems to stir desire effortlessly. The tension between them quickly builds, leading to a fiery and passionate night in the bedroom. Later that day, Richard takes a phone call from his wife, who warmly reminds him that a family, including their children, awaits his return. Their conversation is casual and smooth, with no trace of suspicion. She believes he's simply away on his usual desert hunting trip. The next morning, Jennifer, wearing nothing but her underwear, walks into the kitchen and casually pours herself a glass of water. Jennifer is suddenly caught off guard by the unexpected arrival of Richard's friends, who show up a day early for their hunting trip. Richard, clearly irritated, struggles to hide his frustration. Their premature arrival threatens to expose his secret relationship with Jennifer. But with the men already at the doorstep, he has no choice but to let them stay. The two are introduced as Stan and Dimitri. During the introductions, it quickly becomes apparent that Stan is particularly drawn to Jennifer, his attraction thinly veiled. As evening sets in, the group relaxes by the pool, taking in the sweeping desert views. Dimitri, in high spirits, scans the horizon with a pair of binoculars. Clearly entertained, though, his curiosity soon shifts to the intriguing gift the pilot left for Richard. Richard explains that the substance is a powerful hallucinogen, notorious for its intense, mind-bending effects. Grinning, he jokes that even a tiny dose could knock out an entire football team. He then shares a disturbing tale of a man who once overdosed. According to the story, when the drug took hold, the man supposedly sawed off his own leg without feeling a thing. To prevent any potential conflict over the drug, Richard asks Jennifer to stash it somewhere safe. But her curiosity gets the best of her. Rather than hiding it away, she discreetly slips the substance into her necklace. Moments later, she steps outside and begins a slow, seductive dance beneath the desert sky, immediately drawing the men's gaze and holding them spellbound. As the night wears on, Jennifer fully embraces the role of a showgirl, captivating the men with a hypnotic, sensual performance. Among them, Stan is the most entranced. His thrill peaks when she pulls him into the dance, their movements electric with desire. The next morning, as Jennifer begins to stir, she's met with a beaming Stan, who cheerfully invites her to join him for breakfast. With Richard out of the house, Stan sees an opportunity to get closer to Jennifer. But she remains distant, brushing him off and slipping quietly into her room. Undeterred, Stan follows, pressing on with his advances despite her clear disinterest and growing discomfort. Frustrated, Stan confronts Jennifer, demanding to know why she's suddenly keeping her distance, especially after the connection he thought they shared the night before. Jennifer responds with icy indifference, telling him bluntly that he's just not her type, especially given his height. The remark hits hard, wounding Stan's pride and leaving him bitter. Though resentment simmers beneath the surface, his desire for her remains, burning with undiminished intensity. Paralyzed by fear, Jennifer could do nothing but submit to the man's assault. At that moment, Dimitri appeared, but instead of stepping in, he stood silently, watching his friend's actions without a word. Choosing avoidance over intervention, he quietly walked away, turned on the TV and raised the volume, hoping it would muffle the sound of Jennifer's cries. A few hours later, Richard returns home, instantly sensing the uneasy tension hanging between his two friends. Stan brushes it off with a vague comment about a small issue with Jen, offering no explanation. Alarmed, Richard goes to check on her only for Jennifer to urgently beg him to call a helicopter, insisting she needs to leave and go home immediately. Seeing Jennifer in tears, Richard quickly pieces together what has happened. Furious, he storms out to confront his friends, unleashing his anger over their actions. When Jennifer regains consciousness, she pleads once more to be taken home. Speaking calmly, Richard assures her that his friends will apologize and adds that he's given her a large sum of money hoping it will help her leave the incident behind. Overwhelmed and desperate, Jennifer finally snaps, threatening to reveal her affair with Richard to his wife unless the helicopter arrives to take her home. Her ultimatum sets Richard off, and his explosive reaction terrifies her. Panicked, she bolts from the house, only for his two friends to spot her and quickly join Richard in chasing after her. Jen's escape is abruptly cut short when she reaches a dead end at the cliff's edge. Richard and his friends arrive just in time, trapping her near the precipice. Filled with regret, Richard desperately apologizes, expressing his deep remorse. He attempts to calm her down, calling the pilot to arrange her immediate departure. Jen begins to relax, relieved that her request has been granted. But then, in a shocking twist, Richard abruptly pushes her off the cliff. As she falls, she is impaled by a tree. Stan and Dimitri stand in stunned silence, horrified by Richard's cold-blooded act, unable to believe he had the audacity to send her to her death. Richard explains that letting Jen go would put them all at great risk, potentially facing up to 15 years in prison for their actions. He's also worried that his affair in the desert might come to light and ruin his marriage. Afterward, Richard and his friends return to the house to gather their hunting gear. They plan to return later to erase all evidence of the murder and resume their hunting trip as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Jen, still impaled, begins to attract a swarm of ants. It's astonishing she's still alive, likely because the tree branches narrowly missed her vital organs. Trapped by a shrub, Jen struggles to free herself and spots the lighter she always carries. Summoning all her strength, she manages to grab it. With relentless determination, she sets the dry shrub on fire. The flames cause the shrub to break, freeing her, though a branch remains painfully impaled through her body. Meanwhile, Richard and his friends make their way to Jen's location to dispose of her body. Determined to find Jen, the three men search for a way down the cliff to begin their hunt. As soon as Jen hears they've left, she seizes the opportunity to slip from her hiding spot. The path around the cliff is too far, so the men don't reach her location until nightfall. By then, they're confused and bewildered, unable to fathom how Jen could have vanished so quickly. As the men continue their search, they discover traces of Jen's blood and eagerly follow the trail. However, their progress comes to an abrupt stop when the blood leads them to a lake, with no further signs of her. In hopes of finding her, the three men decide to split up, but Stan, hiding his fear, opts to wait in the car, hoping she might return on her own. Despite losing a considerable amount of blood, Jen gathers the last of her strength to keep running. From a distance, she hears the sound of a vehicle searching for her. In a panic, she dives underwater, holding her breath as she waits. Dimitri arrives on his quad bike, but after finding no sign of Jen, he hesitates before reluctantly leaving. As Jen reaches the shore, she spots Dimitri not far off. Seizing the opportunity, she notices his rifle left next to his vehicle. Caught off guard, Dimitri tries to calm Jen, who is clearly determined to kill him. However, to her frustration, she quickly realizes that Dimitri had deliberately lured her in, placing an unloaded weapon far from himself. Dimitri quickly contacts his two friends, but decides to torture Jen before bringing her to them. However, Jen seizes the chance to snatch the knife from Dimitri's pocket. In a desperate act of self-preservation, she stabs him, killing him, and leaving his body in the lake. With his equipment now in her possession, Jen continues her escape. Her escape is abruptly halted when the vehicle she's riding runs out of gas. With no other option, Jen is forced to continue on foot, the branch still lodged in her stomach. Not far ahead, she finds a cave and takes shelter. While the brief rest provides some relief, the pain from her wounds is excruciating, too intense to treat properly. As Jen glances at the necklace around her neck, a sudden memory resurfaces. She recalls the narcotics she had hidden there days earlier. She remembers just how potent their effects can be. Without hesitation, she swallows the drugs, grimacing at the bitter taste, knowing she desperately needs their impact. Moments later, a strange, powerful sensation begins to spread through her body, something both intense and unexplainable. The hallucinogenic effects of the narcotics quickly take hold, and Jen starts hearing disembodied voices and seeing vivid, intense hallucinations. In a semi-conscious haze, she instinctively begins preparing an emergency treatment for her wound. Numb to the pain, she summons the strength to perform the excruciating task, driven not by willpower, but by the eerie absence of agony she can no longer feel. As the knife slices through the skin of her abdomen, Jen remains unnervingly calm, her face betraying no sign of pain. Once she successfully removes the branch lodged in her stomach, she heats a tin can and presses it firmly against the wound to cauterize it, halting the bleeding. The next day, the scene shifts to Stan, still asleep in the Jeep. Meanwhile, Richard, having failed to find Jen, returns with game from the hunt and throws a dead animal into the area in frustration. At this point, they are still unaware of Dimitri's death. After waking, Stan heads to the lake to wash his face, only to be shocked when Dimitri's lifeless body emerges from the water. Richard erupts in fury, but Stan keeps his emotions buried, quietly wrestling with the shock and grief of losing his best friend. It doesn't take him long to conclude that Jen is responsible for Dimitri's death. With no other option, they are forced to dispose of their friend's body in the lake. Once it's done, Richard vents his frustration, blaming Stan for not accompanying Dimitri earlier and staying behind in the car instead. They leave the scene, already planning their next move to track down Jen. Meanwhile, Jen, recovering from her injuries thanks to her earlier treatment, regains her strength. She retrieves the bird emblem from the beer can she used to cauterize her wound and, gripping her rifle, charges out of the cave ready for whatever comes next. It was all a nightmare hallucinations induced by the drugs, forcing Jen to relive her trauma. But when she finally regains consciousness, she steels herself to move forward. This time, her goal isn't survival, it's revenge. The woman who once seemed fragile has transformed into a fierce, unshaken force, driven and unafraid. Fueled by raw emotion and armed with a shotgun, Jen sets out to hunt Richard and Stan across the desert. Meanwhile, the men find Jen's abandoned quad bike and decide to split up. Richard heads out first while Stan, still aching from his nose, checks the damage in a mirror. Stan's reflection in the mirror unknowingly reveals his location to Jen. Undeterred by her injuries and bare feet, she starts tracking him. As Stan drives through the desert, his vehicle slowly runs out of fuel. Jen spots her chance, raises her weapon with an 8x scope, and takes aim at Stan. Despite her lack of experience, she focuses on his vital areas. The shot grazes his shoulder, and his scream confirms the hit. But when Jen stands to reposition, she realizes Stan has already vanished. Jen follows the blood trail through the desert, determined to track down the man who raped her. Meanwhile, Stan binds his shoulder with a sock, trying to stop the bleeding. The trail eventually goes cold, and all Jen finds is one of his discarded shoes. Unbeknownst to her, Stan lies nearby, quietly loading his weapon, preparing to ambush her. Despite his efforts, Stan struggles to aim, his gunshot wound making it hard to steady his weapon. When he fires, the bullet grazes Jen's ear. Already injured, she bolts, running as Stan fires at her. In a desperate move, she grabs a shard from a broken torch and uses it to block his pursuit. The glass shards wound Stan, leaving him limping as he struggles to remove them from his feet. Once done, he realizes he's too injured to keep running. Undeterred, he heads back to the car, determined to continue the chase by any means. Stan's leg injury makes it hard to press the accelerator, but driven by rage, he pushes through. Meanwhile, Jen finally takes down the man who raped her, ending his life. As she watches Stan from a distance, Richard's voice crackles through the walkie-talkie, reigniting her fury, a reminder of the man who nearly destroyed her. On the other end, Richard fumes with frustration, still unable to track her down. When Stan fails to show up at the meeting point and ignores Richard's repeated calls, frustration mounts. Exhausted and on edge, Richard decides to head home. As he arrives, the stress is evident on his face, growing with each passing moment. In the silence, a chilling thought creeps in. Stan hasn't returned because Jen may have killed him. Richard plans to leave the desert and contacts the helicopter pilot for a pickup. After cleaning up, he begins preparing to depart. Just as he's about to leave, a strange noise catches his attention. Despite being naked, his instincts kick in, and he cautiously moves to investigate. Convinced Jen has returned to kill him, Richard searches the house inside and out but finds no trace of her. Just as his tension starts to ease, the TV blares to life, confirming his worst fear, Jean is there. Before he can react, he sees her, shotgun raised and aimed at him, and realizes he's at her mercy. Jen's shot hits Richard in the stomach, sparking a fierce gunfight. Wounded, he staggers back, clutching his bleeding side as he retreats. Jen stays on his trail, relentless. But as she nears the next room, she doesn't realize Richard is already there, hidden and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jen spots Richard's blood trail, forcing her to take a different route to avoid a trap. Weakened from blood loss, Richard desperately presses a food wrapper to his wound, but it offers no relief. Jen quickly closes in, triggering another chase. However, as she rushes after him, she slips on the blood trail, briefly slowing her down. In a moment of vulnerability, Richard seizes the chance to strike, but Jen, weakened, struggles to defend herself. Desperate, she aims at his wound and, summoning her last strength, fires a fatal shot, ending his life. The three men who abused and nearly killed her face the consequences, and Jen's long-awaited revenge is finally complete. Bloodied but resolute, Jen takes a few steady steps outside, briefly savoring her victory. But the sound of an approaching helicopter halts her. She turns, her body tense with anticipation.